we will look into 2D arrays mainly to define and initialize. Okay. So let's take let me give you example here. A 2D array is nothing, it's very simple. All right, very similar to the 1D array. Let's take this as a data array, always points to the first element. We saw that in the 1D array. Okay, it's like a pointer, array pointer constant, and you define the rows and the column. That's all. This is just the way you define. Let's pretend we are taking an integer. All right, so the indices of the columns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it starts with the 0, and the rows 1, 2 goes on. Okay, and the size of this entire array in terms of integer is obviously sorry, this is 4 times 3, 12. 12 integer data types. In terms of bytes, 12 times 4 is 48 bytes. Okay, very simple. So the way we initialize this, okay, if it is very simple, you can initialize it. For example, if you are playing tic-tac-toe, which is 3 by 3, right? If a tic-tac-toe array, tic-tac-toe. So the way we define it could be tic-tac-toe, 3 rows, 3 columns, equal to, let's see, if you want to initialize all of them to 0, one shot. So that is the way you do it, 0. So it initializes everything to 0. All right, very simple, right? So that's one way of defining. You can simply define like this too without initialization. This is just a definition, but you can combine those two with initialization like this. This is a simple initialization. All right. There are other crude ways to initialize. In this case, for example, let's say 9 elements, right? So some people will, you can also do this, which is not recommended. All right. You can do this too. But the problem is we really don't know if we are how many rows and columns. Okay, you might end up having programming errors in this case. Do not do that. Even though it looks simple, but do not do that. The best way I would suggest is, of course, is let's say pretend we have a data, say 3, 4, is to do something. First row, you fill in values, say like that. So this is a first row, comma, second row, let's say dummy values, comma, okay, second row. And the third row could be something like that, some arbitrary values. For the last row, you don't need to put a comma, you simply have to do that. Okay. In general, if you see it, I did not put a comma there. So this is the another way to initialize. And there are a lot of ways, but I'm going to do one more and just stop it. That's enough for us to understand the concept. We can also initialize some of them to zeros. This is the first row. So initialize with all zeros. The second row, same as what we did before, like this. And the third row, oh, comma there, can be 0. So this is another way. See, different flavors of defining the data array, a 2D array. All right. So in this video, we just looked at a simple definition of data arrays in 2-dimensional, and we also looked at how to initialize. There is no recommended, but the most simple thing is to define the one second. Best way is to define a simpler way, and is to do the simplest way, right? And then fill in the values, and it depends upon the application. Here for tic-tac-toe, we just initialize to 0. And this is, if you know how to populate the values, this is the best way, because you know how the rows are arranged. You know the number of columns match. So that is the ideal way. This is a little bit confusing because some rows are 0, some zeros have values. This might involve programming errors also. And if the reason I'm saying programming errors is, if you miss a value, let's say you initialize these things, but you missed a value here. So this might end up having programming errors, because you may think you have entered a value but actually not. So that is why you have to be little you can easily catch the errors in this case. All right. Again, it's all about style and your application, what you plan to do. All right. Thank you.